Hey you geeks! Today we are reviewing Brandon Sanderson's latest release, Tress of the Emerald Sea, and it is totes my goats of the greatest of all time. It is also a wonderful book to listen to while you're sick. This nursed me through my New Year's headache, as it were. It is practically perfect in every way. If you like fencing, fighting, chases, escapes, monsters, rodents of unusual intelligence, dragons, and
true love,
then this book is for you. Though there's not actually fencing. Since this is one of Sando's secret projects, I thought I would talk a little bit about how the book actually is. As I got mine on Saturday and am loving it. Once this comes out in mass market paperback, this will be a perfect book to bring on your trip to the Quetico or Boundary Waters. The illustrations are awesome and they look so good in print. I will say that due to the artist's realistic style, some of them in the ebook looked more like bad Photoshop than excellent artistry, but once you're in the print book, that does not become a problem anymore. I also began listening to this book just as an audio book. I first downloaded it directly into my iTunes, but that didn't sync from my laptop to my phone, which is so weird. So I tried the Spotify version. It was a little tricky sometimes to make sure that you're at the right place if you switch between laptop and phone. However, once you figure out that you look for the green checks, it is very easy to synchronize your positions. Lastly, I will say that my car prefers playing books on Spotify rather than Audible, so there is something to consider.
He lives in Utah with his wife and children and future.
But enough with the non-spoilers. Let's break this sucker down by characters, world building, magic system, and plot. Tress. I appreciate Tress as a girl who was given a nickname for her unruly hair in grade school. I love her as a character. I'm also not very good at imposing on other people unless prompted.
Actually, I'm very grateful for having naturally curly hair.
She is also a spectacular example of how Sanderson makes ordinary skills useful in epic adventures. Sanderson cleverly uses her unique but specific set of skills to lead her to success early in the story. She is so successful that the crew think that she is a king's mask, because masks, are incredibly comfortable.
Oh no, it's just they're terribly comfortable. I think everyone will be wearing them in the future.
This I see as a way of letting us empathize with the other characters whose perspectives we don't have, but we later learn are lying through their teeth. We see Tress struggle to tell the truth when that seems at odds with her actually helping, which is all she really wants to do. All in all, Tress is a wonderful protagonist, not too skilled, but just the right girl for the job. And I love her. Moving on to Huck. Right around the time Tress started experimenting with spores and Hoyd was going on about her character development, I started to wonder why Tress was getting so much development and her love interest wasn't. I didn't think this book was going to end up like Willow.
God, I was so blind before. But I see now we needed this time apart.
What with Charlie channeling Sanderson's fondness of telling stories, though a bit immature, and Tress channeling what I'm supposing is his wife's no-nonsense business sense. These two were OTP from page 1. At around the same time, Hoyd starts talking about a dragon, and knowing this book has awesome pictures, I I decided to start flipping randomly through the ebook to find a picture of the dragon. Instead, I found the page that said, "You didn't keep Charlie here." "And what," the sorceress said, "do you think I did with him?" "You turned him into a rat," Tress said. Oops! Well, I didn't get the specifics of his curse, so I was still surprised when he betrayed Tress's plans and worked to get her back to the Emerald Sea and safety, for her own good. But rereading this book from the very beginning, knowing Charlie's the rat, makes it all the more sweeter, and you get to see his actual character growth and developing bravery from the garden wall to the sorceress's tower, and it is beautiful. Tress's family. Tress's regular family just perfectly grounds the story as one of an ordinary girl who goes on to do something extraordinary. Furthermore, Sanderson uses them to give context for Tress's lack of wanting to impose when her father vaguely implies that he's looking for help from all the people he's helped.
To my big brother George, the richest man in town.
It's all very passive imposition and very Canadian. Hoyd. By the way, I think Hoyd would look great in a mullet and definitely think that 80s hair should have a comeback. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. The things he let slide in passing about himself could fill an entire video, and they will. So, I just want to talk here about how Sando is different from the other big names in fantasy writing, particularly The Name of the Wind. Both stories are about magical men who go on to achieve greater power by helping women in their lives.
Have you come because you need my help to save a certain distressing damsel? Or rather, damsel in distress? Either one.
Kvothe wraps his story about himself and makes him look great, and I really am over it. But Hoyd's story is about Tress and Charlie, in which he is just the bumbling sidekick. This is also why the Pirates of the Caribbean original worked so well, and its sequels had varying levels of success. Because when you frame the story around the crazy, indestructible, all-powerful dude, he is never in any real danger. Hoyd straight up tells the reader several times that no matter what happens to the crew, he will walk away just fine, more or less. So it's the crew I'm worried about, and it's the crew Sando invests us in. The crew.
My name is Doug. I have just met you, and I love you.
All have their own unique tales that Sando does so well I can barely do them justice here. However, he does set them up well as morally culpable because they were the pirates who didn't do anything.
We don't do anything.
A story that was originally written for his own amusement, it's great to see how the guy intentionally goes on to include people of all abilities and all races. It's not something he's just doing to be cool. Their story leads them from inaction to action, from passively accepting Crow's leadership because they are part of the crew.
Losing you up, bit by bit, till you end up like poor Withany.
To going into the Midnight Sea to help Tress and conquer the sorceress. Oh, Lumar, eh? Most Sanderson stories, I find, strike a chord with a musical or two, and that just makes them so much better. Totes' musical connection was pointed out to me on Instagram by You Could Be Fire.
Fish and chips and shipwrecks.
This is Newfoundland. Welcome to the rock.
You know, Come From Away is a story about the town of Gander in Newfoundland and how they helped stranded passengers in September of 2001. It's sad and heartwarming and also raises questions of who you are when your old life has shattered.
The person in the mirror who's turned into someone else.
It also highlights the universal goodness of the human spirit and is just the sort of story Sando loves to tell. More importantly, it makes Tress's Rock a Canadian province, meaning Tress is the second in the proud line of Canadian fictional pirates.
I'm going to be a pirate on the river Saskatchewan.
I love it! Though Tress, being from the Emerald Sea, could be said to be from Ireland, and thus the Pirate Queen, what with its final act as a showdown between its heroine and its villainess over her captive love interest.
Wonder what you'd do if I said my love.
And yet, despite having a great soundtrack, which is wonderful to sing on portages, The Pirate Queen doesn't quite come together as a musical, probably because it assumes that all women think alike. Sanderson does not make this assumption, which is why Tress of the Emerald Sea can reach new depths and works on every level. Water, water everywhere. Canada is known for its 3 distinct features.
Rocks and trees and trees and rocks and water.
But Lumar is greatly lacking in water. I suppose this is because Sanderson grew up in landlocked Idaho and now lives in a desert where everything tastes like salt. Seriously, it ruins a good latte. So he doesn't get water.
I never veer to starboard cause I never sail at all.
And since Don Shard came out, I've been betting he would never write a swashbuckler because of his lack of comfort in writing scenes on the sea. I figure he's much more comfortable with writing about sand, or spores in this case, which to his credit, he was able to turn into oceans for this book. I suppose waves of helpful rock crabs were already taken. Thus we get the aether spores, which are wonderful as they contribute to the story as their own sea monsters which attack ships and totally flips the book on what is dangerous about a storm at sea. Yet they are just the natural features of Tress's land, which Tress, as a Sanderson heroine, studies and learns to make use of on her journey in growing from a window washer to a sprouter extraordinaire. Undercurrents of Narnia. Tress's conversation with her parents has the same undercurrent of logic that Susan and Peter's conversation with the professor in Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe has. That is, if a practical girl suggests something crazy, it might be that the crazy idea is the only practical solution.
Well, if she's not mad and she's not lying, then logically, we must assume she's telling the truth.
Following on the heels of that, we have Huck's explanation for why he can't say his full name, because it's something very full and in rat that a human couldn't say. This is, of course, reminiscent of why Bree is not consistently called Bree Hinny Winny Hinny Hooey Ha. Yes, I have that memorized. Because Shasta couldn't say it in A Horse and His Boy. This, undercurrent was perfect misdirection for me on Huck's true identity, and I loved it! This illusion may have been intentional or not. The cherry on top of this Narnian Sunday is that we are on a ship with a talking rodent.
It told! Did anyone just say that? It just told!
He always told.
Passing a dragon's lair on our way to a voyage off the edge of the map. Not that Tress of the Emerald Sea has a map, which is kind of a bummer, but anyway, it made me want to read Voyage of the Dawn Trader, but you wonderful viewers have talked me out of making that mistake. These were the Narnian elements that were missing from the undercurrents in Dawnshard, and I'm not really surprised to find them here. Sanderson is great for splicing up familiar stories and weaving them together in new and unfamiliar ways. Just as this is fundamentally The Princess Bride rewritten. Conspiracy. Sando has definitely been talking to someone who knows a thing or two about legal stuff. You can see it in his proper use of felony murder to motivate the crew.
I'm so happy.
Though he left out the part about conspiracy, which is what really made them legally as well as morally culpable for being complicit in Captain Crow's cruel sea antics. Their complicity and their guilt over it was a wonderful motivation for why they chose Tress to be their new captain. Not to mention the whole curses are like contracts thread, and the plot to find the loopholes is just such fun. It adequately sets up why Huck and Hoyd are unable to be more helpful to Tress, even as she is going forth to free them from their current predicaments.
You have a debt to pay.
It is a much more streamlined plot than, say, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, from which most Salian stories take a long and meandering plot route that doesn't quite add up in the end. All these threads wrap together to build up to the perfect, self-aware avalanche, and Tress coming to the realization that being a damsel in distress is nothing to be ashamed of, provided that she had helped others along the way. Needing help isn't a weakness, but being unwilling to accept it is. And that is a moral I can really appreciate, and can love this story for telling in the most ridiculous 80s way possible. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment to tell me what you thought of Tress and the Emerald Sea.